In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about actually having constant, continuous, and perpetual permanent connection to your spiritual support team. Some may call this your angelic guides, your guardian angels, your spirit team, whatever you call it. I'm going to clear up all the misconceived notions around connecting with your spiritual support team, accessing their guidance 24/7, and more advanced ways to live with this connection deeper than ever before, especially if you're an advanced Starseed or extraterrestrial hybrid. Hello Starseeds, welcome to Starseed Energetics. My name is Ashtara Ren to bring you some of the highest frequency content, and this is part of a 24-day transmission and activation intended to help you activate the deepest parts of your galactic consciousness, your extraterrestrial brain, and assist you in evolving deeper than ever before, because the time is now. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be addressing what I've noticed a lot coming from clients, and one of the questions that I get asked the most often, surprisingly, is what to do when it feels like you can't hear your guides anymore, and it feels like you're disconnected from your guides, and it feels like you're doing something wrong. You don't really feel the presence of your guides, and this is a very highly misconceived perception of your guides, because if you truly know and understand what they are and how they function, you'll never feel like they've left you just because you've made a certain decision. It's almost as if you're saying that your breathing got really quiet or that your heartbeats got really quiet. It's always consistent. Your breathing is always consistent. Your heartbeats, even though it has fluctuations, it's always consistent. It's just your awareness that is not really tuned into it because you simply are not understanding how it truly works. Just because you're not mindful to your breathing, it doesn't mean that you're going to become insecure, that all of a sudden your breath is not really functioning anymore. Same thing applies to your guides. They're always there. It's a part of you. It's literally what you are composed of. It's a piece of your function. You simply wouldn't even exist without those levels of your spiritual consciousness active in your field at all times. And they will never leave you or become quiet just because you make certain decisions. They don't judge you for making any decisions. If anything, they will be so open and supportive of whatever decisions you make. And of course, if you ask for their opinion, they're going to kind of suggest certain perspectives, but they'll never tell you what to do. They respect your boundaries and they respect your free will, and they'll love you unconditionally no matter what you choose. I feel that people just really personalize the guides to make it seem like they would somehow act similar to humans, but it's very, very different than how humans would act. This conditional type of love that you experience, or this fear of abandonment that you experience with people, it simply doesn't apply to your higher facets of consciousness. And essentially, that's really all that they are. Your guides, at the end of the day, if you look at them energetically, they are patterns of higher dimensional you. It is part of your individuated consciousness, but it's almost like this intermediary between this abstract, non-dual, total source of oneness that is bridged together with your individuated consciousness. So they're simply just higher dimensional versions and higher complexity versions of who you are that transcend time and space. And if you become quiet enough, raise your frequencies enough to be able to access them, and simply remember that they're there at all times, you'll never feel abandoned, or you'll never have trouble accessing their guidance ever again. And here's what I'll say too, is that because of their high frequency and their subtlety, and their energies are subtle, because on higher dimensions, the energies are subtle. And because of their lack of density or loudness or polarity that you're very much used to. For example, when you encounter things on the third density, it's very viscerally loud and dramatic. For example, my voice going to you, it's very loud, and you can just hear. There's no way you can not hear me if you're actually playing this video, because this is being traveled through the third density where there's a lot of polarities. And so the result of having that much polarity on an energetic level is that you can't miss it. It's very loud, it's very dense. But higher guidance is subtle. So what you have to do when you feel like they've become quiet, you have to realize that they haven't become quiet, but your mind has just become really loud. So you need to quiet your mind, you know? The second thing that I want to add is that a lot of people don't realize that they get to make the rules when it comes to the communication between the higher dimensions and their human self. So people just feel that everything is determined already and they communicate in the way that they want, and that's the only way you can access them. But actually, as the human counterpart, which you are a very precious human counterpart, and a lot of people have a self-worth issue that they just feel like they're not that important, but to the spiritual reality, you are like the baby golden child of the entire dimensions, and you get to define and choose, and you get to communicate and negotiate to these higher levels of your complexity consciousness. Like, this is how I'd like my communication. You can request for specific programming of the guidance. So for example, if you want to set up an algorithm of like a yes and a no, then you can ask for them a specific color to come up in your vision when it's a yes, and a specific color to come up in your vision if it's a no. Like, an obvious example would be like, if the answer to a question is a yes, please show me green light. If the answer to a question is a no, then please show me red light. For example, you can actually program that and ask for that. If you're more of a sound person, then you can ask for a specific sound. If the answer is a yes, please communicate with the sound of bells. And if it's a no, communicate with the sound of traffic or honking or something. You know what I mean? Something unpleasant. So you can actually quite literally request this, and you can request for the guidance. Like, if you want it to be more articulate, you can be like, please be more articulate, please be more direct. You can re-prompt the guidance that you get. And the funny thing is that if you've ever used ChatGPT, and I actually definitely want to delve into, guys, like, share how to use ChatGPT in very spiritual and evolved ways. And I really want to make that video. I love technology, and it just comes natural to me because my extraterrestrial life forms are all in love with technology as well, and we all know how to use it organically and integrate it to spirit. But anyway, if you ever use ChatGPT and you don't know how to use ChatGPT, you'll just end up getting really bad answers. And so the same thing kind of goes for your guides. Imagine your guides or your higher complexity dimensions are like this infinite bank of frequencies, knowledge, and non-judgment. And you're the prompter. You're the part of the engineer who gets to decide what answers you get. If you ask ChatGPT like a very bland question with not any instructions, no context, and then you just get the answer, I can guarantee you anything, the answers from ChatGPT will be so bad. But if you set up the right context and put your effort into setting the context, and when you get the answer back and you re-prompt it, like re-engineer the answers. So like, can you adjust it like this? Can you adjust it like that? Can you take on this tone? Can you make it this length? Then the ChatGPT will give you magic. And it's kind of the same thing with these higher dimensions. You can't just be like, tell me what I need to know. What should I do about this situation? In your communication, in your telepathic communication, you're the one who is actually co-creating this communication. You're the other half of the communication. So make sure you set the context. Make sure you clarify and define what it is that you're looking for. And if the guidance doesn't come in a way that you like, redirect it, re-prompt it. They don't have a sense of time and space, and they don't have limits. So you can ask infinite questions, and you can ask for infinite different iterations of the answers. And if you ask a very unclear question, you're going to get a very unclear answer. So make sure your question is clear, coming from a space of clarity, and have this conviction and knowing that whatever answers you're getting are exactly what you need to know for the moment. But for example, if you'd like it to be a little bit more verbal, you can ask for them to be a little bit more verbal. If you want to ask them, I want to communicate with oracle cards, then they'll communicate through the oracle cards, you know. And oracle cards, if you can get really nice decks, it's a great tool because the oracle cards already have certain frequencies. So if you really connect with your higher levels of consciousness and pull specific cards. Obviously, that's why you guys all love tarot readings. Most of you have probably found my channel through tarot readings. So yeah, that's how you can work and reprompt your higher dimensional consciousness and make sure that you know that you get to decide, like you get to participate in how the answers show up for you. With that being said, there's an important key factor that you do need to know. You're an ever evolving being, and as you evolve, your psychic interface also evolves, as your third eye evolves, as your crown evolves, as your chakric systems and your energetic field evolves, and your spiritual light quotient evolves. That means that your channel and your interface with your higher guides will change and shift accordingly. And specific cycles of time of your evolution will also bring in specific different guides. So you'll notice say, for example, when people come to me and they're like, it feels like the guides are not there anymore. I'm like, well, perhaps they've been swapped for a different collective, or they've just been new members of different collective consciousness in your guidance field. And it doesn't feel exactly the same as 2 years ago because you've evolved so much that your counsel has completely evolved and you're still looking for these specific frequencies and the answers come in specific frequencies like 2 years ago. But what if you have a completely new collective of angels and spirit guides and galactic teams and ascended masters? So be very open and curious, like who is in my field today? Who is in my guidance field today? For me, for example, my guidance field always changes very often. And so I'm in this space of curiosity. I don't just assume that it's the same collective. And depending on my inquiry, depending on what I'm going through, depending on the lessons I'm currently learning, it's going to be different collectives. It's going to be different facets of consciousness. So I'm always open, and just be open to that as well. Open your heart and ask yourself who is in my field and how does this collective communicate? Because a lot of collectives will communicate in different ways, different frequencies, different sensory perceptions, different dimensions. So open your entire fields up. So say, for example, you used to work with guides from the 5th dimension or 6th dimension before, and all of a sudden now you have a group of guides from the 9th dimension. Yeah, it's going to feel different. And maybe you're just like totally closed off to that possibility of the 9th dimensional guides because you're expecting the same kind of frequency and answers. So get to know, like vibe out. How does this collective want to communicate? How does that feel in my body? How does that feel in my mental field? What is their style of delivery? And how can I make sure that they know the best ways to integrate my energy and give me guidance in this way? And it might be like a bit of a trial and error process until you completely get to calibrate, but in time you'll learn how to fluently shift between different facets of consciousness. When you do this often and you practice getting to know different collectives, getting to know their communication style with high level of curiosity, then you'll get to know. And always you can invoke your higher self, and your heart field to assist you in translating this. If, for example, say a completely different guides come through and their frequency feels very foreign and their style of communication feels very foreign to you, then you can request for them to communicate with your higher self or your heart field, and for you to kind of get a translation from that, because your higher self knows you to the core and your heart field knows you to the core. And the other thing is that, as you evolve, some guides may like to communicate with multiple different sensory perceptions. Say, for example, I talked about synesthesia, or kind of like these time capsules of holographic fields, and some might just be sending you linear messages or just an insight. So again, it's always very different. Just be very open-minded to how the guidance can come through. And here's the important part. The higher dimensional the guidance gets, or the higher dimensional consciousness that you interact with, the delivery or the transmissions become more and more subtle and abstract. So once you are working with like a very refined level, say like 11th dimensional, 10th dimensional energy, even 12th dimensional energy, you're going to have to realize that it's not going to come as a direct linguistic message, but it's more like a frequency, and then it trickles through your field and your higher centers, and it just kind of transmutes even your question. So whatever inquiry that you had may simply just become irrelevant or dissolve under this alchemy And at the end of the day, it almost just becomes like this raising of your frequencies rather than just like guidance. And what will essentially happen is that at this point of very refined evolution, very refined level of alchemy, and very refined level of consciousness, where all it is like just like a showering of divine energy rather than any level of linear guidance at all. It's just like a showering of higher frequencies. What will essentially happen is that your consciousness will just ascend to a level where your questions become irrelevant and your situations become irrelevant. And so how do you practically integrate that? Is that now, if you hit this stage of your evolution, you're meant to just integrate those frequencies and navigate through your reality with this frequencies, and it will change your perspectives. So quite literally, instead of understanding what to do next or understanding like what are the tangible things to do, what will happen is that your entire frequencies will shift, your perspectives will shift, and from there your entire frequencies will shift, and as a result your perception will shift. And from these shifted perceptions, it's not the matter of knowing what to do. Your perception simply shifts and you become fully embodied in this field of potentials. And the correct action, without you knowing what is the next thing to do, without you planning anything, the best form of action naturally arises. And you're kind of like this witness who gets to observe yourself, your human self, make the right decisions, take the right aligned actions, and you just get to witness it rather than knowing what you're doing or kind of like planning what you're doing. So that is the ultimate essential alchemy of how your higher facets of consciousness or your guides integrate into your life. And it will go back and forth. It'll go like shift in and out. Sometimes it's more relevant to have more of a direct guidance. Sometimes it's more relevant to have this more abstract integration of these higher frequencies and the perspective alchemy. And then it'll go in and out, and not one state is more preferable than the other, but you get to just enjoy the rhythm of these spiritual dimensional fusion that you get to live as a divine human. I hope that this video has been helpful, and of course I'll see you tomorrow in your activation, where I'm going to assist you in activating your galactic pathways, which essentially means all these higher levels of consciousness. I'm going to help you efficiently integrate them and be open to the truth of your interdimensional presence. Bye.